Hey, this is Riley from Romeo Hotel Engineering. Today I want to talk about the DP-12 shotgun and what I think makes it special and really fall into a class of its own, aside from the obvious features of it having the two barrels. In my experience, this gun gets a bad reputation because I think people are just not really mindful of all its features that it packs together in one unique firearm. And they just have these preconceived notions that a gun like this doesn't make sense. I've heard gun shop owners say that they would never even stock this because it breaks the manual of arms for your typical pump action shotgun. But with a gun like this, you end up pulling the trigger twice before racking that action once. And let me tell you, I've been shooting pump action shotguns all my life, and as soon as I picked this up, there was nothing in my brain that said I need to pump the action after each shot. It feels like a different beast in your hands, and because of that, it's easy to learn the manual of arms specific for this gun. When it comes to high capacity shotguns, in my mind, what I typically think about are the competition guns that you often see with the extended magazine tubes, which sometimes go up to the muzzle or even beyond the muzzle, which are great in that environment. But when it comes to a true kind of tactical or CQB environment, that length is going to be an absolute hindrance. The other aspect of these high capacity shotguns that are pretty popular are the magazine fed variants, which again is great, but if you want to get into that higher capacity, you either end with like the longer stick magazines that hang out the bottom, or even in some cases those drum magazines, which in my mind are very cumbersome and not very practical aside from just being a range toy. But with this DP-12, you get that advantage of the higher capacity in what I consider a relatively streamlined layout. And when I say that, I mean aside from the pistol grip, there isn't much else that protrudes off the shotgun. I'm sure you've noticed I replaced the factory forward grip with a Magpul angled grip, which again kind of keeps that gun as sleek as it can be. The action itself in this gun is really just based off of the Ithaca Model 37. So if you can imagine, it's taking like two Ithacas side by side and just packaging them together, and you end up with this nice, overall design in terms of what it can do. Where this gun shines, I think, is comparing to other dual tube magazines. What I mean by dual tube is, you have the side-by-side magazine tubes. With the advantage of having two barrels, that takes the rate of fire to double any competitors. So you think of the Kel-Tec KSG or Smith & Wesson M&P-12, it just ends up being able to shoot faster with the same capacity, which I think is a huge advantage. But the thing to remember is that after you expel one of the magazine tubes, you have to physically hit a switch to change over to the other magazine tube to begin feeding. There are certain designs like the 1216 or the TS12, which have the rotating magazine tubes, which in a semi-auto gun sounds great, but again, it comes back to after you expire one of those tubes, you have to go through that manual action before you get back into the rate of fire which the gun's capable of. What really drew me to this gun and inspired me to design a suppressor for it was the fact that as you're shooting this shotgun, you end up having the action stay closed throughout all of the firing events. So you force all of the gases and everything down the barrel and out through the suppressor, which makes for the quietest possible configuration. With semi-autos, you always end up having some gas blow back through the ejection port as that round's being extracted after it's been fired. But with a design like the DP-12, you end up keeping everything closed, forcing everything through the suppressor, and ultimately keeping the gun a little bit cleaner and, more importantly, quieter than a semi-auto would be capable of. After that explanation, I hope you can appreciate the shotgun for what it's really capable of and how it's really in a class of its own. It definitely has some practical applications, I believe, and you see that sometimes with correctional facilities, officers have adopted some of these shotguns and are training around them. So thanks for watching and stay tuned.